The Dynamic Learning Maps Alternate Assessment System is a new assessment designed to more validly measure what students with significant cognitive disabilities know and can do. This presentation on time and money will provide information to teachers of students with significant cognitive disabilities who will complete the alternate assessment. This training is one in a series that supports teachers in their efforts to teach and assess. Sponsored by a grant from the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. This training is part of the professional development efforts of the Dynamic Learning Maps Alternate Assessment Consortium. Teachers report that time and money are the most frequently taught mathematics concepts for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Like other areas of math, time and money are initially presented in elementary school. However, these skills impact students' independent functioning well beyond the school-age years, and therefore often continue to be a focus of instruction throughout middle school and high school, in math courses, financial management courses, and even through a student's transition plan. Money skills start with recognizing that money has value. Money comes in different shapes and sizes. It comes in metal and in paper. Different units of money have different values that can be used to pay for different things. Size doesn't count. It's the denomination of the money that matters. Grown-ups know that the tiny dime is more valuable than the larger nickel and penny. But to children, this may be hard to understand. The very first step in learning about money and finance is figuring out what money is all about. An important concept to convey to your students is that you need money to buy things. You earn money by working. You may have to wait before you can buy what you want. And there's a difference between what you want and what you need. Then there is the need to actually recognize and know the value of the coins and bills. This is a very hard concept because nowhere else in math do we point to a single item and say, "This is 10. The best way to teach the value of money is to create lessons that focus on purchase power. 2 nickels, or 10 pennies, can buy the same item as 1 dime, but a quarter can buy more of that same item. Additionally, an expectation of the essential elements is that students will be able to indicate the value of a collection of coins. Lessons around this concept will include a variety of strategies. Initially, lessons may start with just adding pennies, and then exchanging those pennies for other coins that have equal value. Then apply their knowledge of skip counting to add a group of like coins, for example, a group of nickels or dimes. Then lessons may shift to combine the skill of adding pennies with the skill of skip counting. For example, 3 nickels and 2 pennies equals 5, 10, 15, 16, 17. Just like they learned to do when they were adding sets with leftovers. Finally, teachers will create lessons for the hardest groupings that are just random collections of coins. Students need to develop strategies for grouping coins so they are easier to add. As you can see on your screen, the coins in this collection were grouped from the greatest value to the least value. There's no particular reason to have students group coins one way or another, but they do want to find a way that makes the most sense to them. Pause for Activity 1. Time is typically taught as an attribute of measurement. However, it's unlike other attributes because it cannot be seen or felt. The DLM essential elements begin to address time in first grade. At this early grade level, the focus is on conceptual understanding of relative time and some language related to time. For example, the essential elements focus on tomorrow, yesterday, today, morning, afternoon, day, and night, as well as things that come next, before, and after. Examples of time concepts that reflect these essential elements include understanding we have PE tomorrow. We get up in the morning. We have math after reading. We go to bed every night. Students need to have lots of meaningful experiences with time in a personal way to gain a clearer understanding of temporal concepts. Teachers do this by establishing routines and schedules that are consistent but allow for flexibility. When we get to school, we take items out of our backpack and put them in our desk before we play with our friends. This doesn't have to be right at 8 o'clock. It may be at 7:45 or 8:15, depending on the day. Teachers talk about specific sequences of events. We will finish reading our story before we go to PE. Teachers also need to review things that have already happened. First, we read the book, and then we went outside. Being involved with familiar sequences of routines and schedules and hearing the language of time in context enhances students' understanding of past, present, and future. As with all children, students with significant cognitive disabilities are likely to gain a receptive understanding of time concepts before they are able to use time-related words to express that understanding. We start building understanding of time by being sure to explicitly teach the meanings of these words in contexts that are meaningful to the student. At first, they learn very general time concepts related to events. These could be special events and the conversations we have that begin, "Remember when?" Then there are the more regular events related to time, such as school days and home days, or day and night. As children experience these things, we actively teach the language related to these temporal concepts and events. Many students with significant cognitive disabilities learn their first time related language as they interact with their schedule or calendar at school. We explicitly teach first then and first next. For students with significant cognitive disabilities, we may have to support these tools with the use of visuals or tactual information. Over time, these experiences, combined with our explicit instruction of temporal concepts, allow students to first understand and then use words that demonstrate their understanding. Most students with significant cognitive disabilities would agree that calendars and schedules are important tools. However, calendars and schedules are not meaningful until we explicitly associate student experiences with the words, images, and tactuals we use to represent the calendar or schedule. Teachers begin these associations when they say things like, "Today is Tuesday. Sarah, what special activity do you get to do today?" Or, "Tom, what special event do you have planned for today?" Teachers can begin teaching concepts related to calendars and schedules by emphasizing special events and experiences. Sometimes, it isn't the day-to-day repetition that helps students make sense of these tools, but the special events or the events that have a special connection for the student. For example, teachers can use a simple calendar to mark upcoming special events, including visits with special people, holidays, or other special events. Marking these events on the calendar and referring to them on a regular basis provides a way of introducing things that will happen today, tomorrow, and a long time from now. Teachers can use calendars to mark more day-to-day information about the food students eat at school and the foods that will soon be available on the school lunch menu. Often, the lunch menu provides an important source for teaching about time concepts as students come to expect favorite foods on certain days. Schedules are a little easier for teachers to imagine because they are often such important tools when working with students with significant cognitive disabilities. Teachers refer students to the schedule throughout the school day, which provides repeated opportunities to teach temporal concepts. Be sure that when you are working with schedules, you remind the student to look at the schedule What did we already finish? What comes next? Taking advantage of incidental opportunities to teach time concepts is also important. Incidental teaching can occur any time, but even incidental teaching takes planning because students with significant cognitive disabilities often require visual symbols or objects to demonstrate their receptive understanding. Teachers need to think through what they may want to focus on and then just gather the symbols or objects they need. The experience could be one as simple as tracking the color shirts students wear. For example, a student could determine that he wore a blue shirt yesterday and is wearing a red shirt today. He could even decide to wear a yellow shirt tomorrow. And tomorrow, you could check to see if his shirt matches his plan from yesterday. This context can lead to learning the concepts of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Incidental repetition with variety, addressing the concepts of yesterday, today, and tomorrow in interactive contexts, is how students with significant cognitive disabilities will pick up these abstract concepts. This next section discusses the concept, skills, big idea, and essential questions associated with the essential elements around the language of time. Often, teachers use this type of information to guide them in their instructional planning. When looking at the beginning language of time, the overarching concept we want students to grasp is that things happen at different times. The skills section on your screen calls out the words and concepts for which students will demonstrate their receptive understanding of time concepts. Remember, students can demonstrate these understandings using symbols, objects, and signs. They don't have to speak to demonstrate these understandings. The big idea behind the language of time is that students gain an understanding of the words used to describe when an event takes place. Notice under the essential questions that none of these questions require a yes-no type of response. We want students to actively engage in activities that cause them to think about time and the words associated with time concepts. Pause for Activity 2. It is important to recognize that reading a clock and understanding time are not equivalent skills. A student can read a clock without understanding the duration of time that has passed, or that there are X number of minutes before an event occurs. Reading a clock has more to do with the skills of learning to read an instrument. But even that can be difficult. Digital clocks let students read time easily, but do not relate times very well to benchmark times. In other words, knowing that 6:58 is almost 7 o'clock. And analog clocks are harder to read because students have to interpret the time when one of the hands is not precisely on the number. Look at the little hand on your screen. It's close to 9, but not on the 9, and it definitely isn't a 10. So what is it? Students have to have experience with both of these clocks in order to develop all the skills they need to tell time. Just as with the previous section on the language of time, teachers need to be sure that they are modeling words and phrases that indicate approximate times, such as about, a little after, or halfway between. This will help students think about where the clock hands are positioned. Along these same lines, we need to direct students' attention to what actually happens to the little hand as the big hand moves, and help them make the connection between the movement of the hands and the duration of 1 minute and 1 hour. So the next really big teaching point pertains to the fact that the numbers we see on the clock do not necessarily represent the time past the hour. In other words, when the little hand points to the 3, it means 3 o'clock. But when the big hand points to the 3, it actually means 15 minutes after the hour. So we have to teach students the meaning of the hash marks that go all the way around the clock. Each one counts as 1, and they add up to 60, which is the same as 1 hour. Then students can see that the clock is broken into 5-minute intervals, and we can use skip counting skills to figure out or to approximate how many times past the hour it is. Nope. Then students can see that the clock is broken into 5-minute intervals, and we can use our skip counting skills to figure out or to approximate how many minutes past the hour it is. Finally, it's really important that we teach students that we don't always need to know the exact time. We can look at a clock and say it's around 3 or it's about 2:45. Rarely on an analog clock do people take the time to figure out the exact time. And in everyday life, people using an analog clock or a digital clock just tend to say, "Turn on the TV, it's almost 6 o'clock," rather than, "Turn on the TV, it's 5:58. Approximate time is an important concept for all students, but particularly for those students who tend to be big rule followers and get anxious or upset over activities not happening at a precise time. So let me introduce you to the rule of Ish. This is not evidence-based or found in any textbook. This was developed because of a reluctancy to teach time to students who want things to happen precisely at the time their schedule says it's going to happen. With the rule of Ish, we teach students that there is a difference between telling time and having a schedule. If we are telling time, when we read the clock, we may give an exact time or an approximate time. Either one is okay. But if we are using time to tell ourselves when we should start an activity, end an activity, leave for an appointment, or even things like when someone should be home, then we use the rule of Ish. Schedules don't use exact times. PE will be at 10 o'clock-ish, even though the schedule reads 10 o'clock. Dad will be home at 6 o'clock-ish, or the bus arrives 3:30-ish. So we teach students that activities may occur a few minutes before or a few minutes after the scheduled time. For students who expect things to happen exactly when we say it will, the rule is a lifesaver for everyone involved. Thank you for participating in the Time and Money module. For further information, please go to www.dynamiclearningmaps.org.